Thank you. Hello once again. Please go to the stage. Good afternoon. Today we have a very interesting subject: mass-produced cities, a new construction technology in megalopolises. Today we speak not only about construction, but about a lot of things related to this. At the plenary sessions, we heard this thesis of a huge role of metropolises and agglomerations in the world. We know that this role is really big, and all these changes are taking place now. 100 years ago, for example, it was one way of doing things, but today we have a different way of things. That's why construction sector and the construction industry has a very important task. We should do everything very quickly. We should respond to changes also quickly. And my name is Sokolov Denis. I'm the partner of Gushing company. I will be a moderator, and today I would like to represent our speakers. Today we have a very interesting panel, but we'll have only 40 minutes, not so much time. But I hope that we'll hear a lot of interesting things. Ervan Dupuy, General Director of Saint-Gobain CIS. Evgeny Murinets, Deputy General Director of Fund of the Institute of Development in Household in Residential Sphere. Petr Marin, Technical Director of Autodesk in Russia and CIS. Birok Khoshnevis, Professor of the University of South California. And Emmanuel Forrest, General Director of EN Product. And maybe I will start with this. I would like to give a floor to Ervan Dupuy, General Director of Saint-Gobain CIS. Maybe you will start and then we'll continue, okay?
Can you hear me? Yeah. When we talk about mass-produced city, there are two things that come to mind on the Saint-Gobain side. Really, the first one is that it's good to mass-produce a city, but it has to be comfortable. What we have experienced in Western Europe typically was that mass-produced cities from the 60s and 70s have proven to be very uncomfortable and ultimately a social failure. To that extent, we are now reconsidering, when we do mass-produced city, the prerequisite that we are developing a comfortable, livable city. At Saint-Gobain, we look at multi-comfort on 4 dimensions. The first comfort that people are asking for more and more is acoustic. It's unbelievable that in our mass-produced cities of the past decades, we still have very uncomfortable acoustics, and people are actually suffering much more than they realize about it. The other one was thermal, of course. We talk about thermal efficiency. There is the visual aesthetics that comes as a third comfort, and the last one is air quality. It is not yet a hot topic in Russia, but if you go to China, let me tell you that air quality in the proper domestic, housing environment is a priority. So those are the 4 main comforts that we think of when we collaborate with city designers and building engineers. The other thing, when we talk about mass-produced cities, I want to draw the lesson of the past, which are, if we standardize overly the designs of those cities, we fail to meet a growing trend, which is the trend of tailor-made. More and more people want to have their own house, their cocoon, which will be different from their neighbors. So mass-produced cities must, in order to be successful, respect 2 things. It must be comfortable, with the 4 comforts I mentioned, and it must be meeting the tailored preferences of each and every one of us, knowing that 2 families will have 2 different set of preferences. Now, when we talk about the mass production technologies, before we cover the more expert angles of it with my colleagues here, I'd like to share the general view that we have as construction product suppliers. We think the highest inefficiencies in the chain come from a disintegrated supply chain. There is a lot of inefficiency that we can chase out in the supply chain. The wasted time, wasted labor, wasted material. BIM is one of the very significant platforms that allows us to bring all the players together. That's obvious, we all know it, and I think you will take us even further than BIM in your speech. but BIM is a platform that's a prerequisite. Beyond this, we are also working as Saint-Gobain, we see a growing demand for prefabricated elements. What I mean by this is not the entire building or what, but there are some today opportunities to build prefabricated partitions. We've just finished 2 pilots with very significant developers here in Russia where we say, you know, when you're going to put the partitions up in all those buildings, let us prefabricate them and come to you in a sequence that we use from the BIM, basically, where you can just apply them much quicker. So that's one of the services that we're developing with them, and I think there's a growing trend there. And the same thing applies for facade. So prefabricated large elements of facade are obviously something that we see more and more. So those would be the general trends on which I'd be happy to take questions later on when we think of mass-produced cities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Спасибо большое.
You raised a very interesting and exciting issue of comfort. How can we provide comfort if we speak about such cities? Evgeny, can you comment on this? Because yes, comfort is very important, and you know, this is the issue which we always face, absence of comfort sometimes. Muscovites also deal with this. Acoustic comfort is, you know, is very important. Not all people mention about this. Moscow really suffers from this because now it seems that we fought the traffic jams finally, but now we have acoustic problem as well. Thank you very much. Can you hear me now? Thank you very much, dear colleagues and friends. Hello. If we speak about comfort, first of all, maybe not enough time we have, but maybe I would like to focus on some key moments which can create a comfortable city. This is diversity, which depends not only upon opportunities of architects and desires of developers, but also upon technologies. Technologies, you know, we conducted research. So it took place when I worked in the Moscow government. Now I work in another place. So we made a research in Moscow. 95% of plants and factories which work at a standard construction. These are plants with technologies which were used 25 years ago and even more. So they were very old-fashioned. And only 5% of plants which are quite new, which are not so old-fashioned, and architects, colleagues which know technologies very well. These are new plants. Peak plant, for example. Also, Morton has this plant, new technologies, and Cross. This is also new technology plant, and this diversity can be achieved with the help of this technology. Diversity is very important in comfortable environment. So my presentation can take only 7 minutes, and it's practically it already took 2 minutes for me to speak about this issue. This is the general presentation about development of construction of residentials in Russia. So when we had this task to give houses to people, comfort was secondary. What it was not so important. So maybe when you have a space, it's already comfort, it meant, for people. And these plants, these standard plants, they could erect buildings in a very short timeline, in a very short time period, and they provided comfort as they understood it. So comfort meant that you have your own place, and that's all. Now there are changes. Changes happened 25 years ago. Plants became private. And in that's in this difficult time when this notion, comfort and architectural quality, was not really important for politicians, and plants worked on their own. and square meters were of primary importance. Quality was not really important for the state, and the standard of quality were not important for the government. This picture you can see, this is not a 3D model. This is a Moscow district. You can see very standard houses, buildings. You can see here the yard, also very standard and boring, monotonous. Everything is the same, looks the same. We have researchers, 300 plants are working now, and so the productivity 30 million per square meter of square meters, 30 million square meters. So earlier last year we had 85 million. And you know, we had researchers, and I think it's possible to have this complex set. And we have statistics also. We did not have statistics at the federal level, but we processed this data. And this data is important for for our tasks. Now we try to clarify the figures, but I think they will be increased. And the general picture is that comfort environment, which we speak about now at this forum and at the other forum, what is comfort? What is a comfortable city? Comfortable environment? It seems clear, but our construction industry is not prepared for comfortable city, and to get it ready, we need a lot of events. We need to do a lot of activities. How should it be? We have some international examples. Industrial architecture. We can say that these are standard buildings, panel buildings, but still these, you know, are prefabricated articles. You know, above, on the top, you in the middle, you have the district which was built in 2012. It was built in London. This was again prefabricated. It was a budget building. To the right you can see public space. It's also one of the most important criteria of comfort public space. We understand that this comfortable environment can be created only with the help of public spaces. This is what is already built. You can see pictures. This is built in Moscow, and you know, to the left, above, you can see here the picture. Maybe you understand it. This is the panel system, which allows to make different facades. And this is the system which helps us to make different types of facades. This can be public space, floors, for example, for some public means, or private. We use this system now. This is what happens in other cities. For example, Rostov-on-Don, the company Anteka, Patriot Engineering Company, LSR Company. So this is the company with good technologies, but again, only several buildings like this. These are basic tasks which are important for us. We can realize it with current technologies. Last year we celebrated one holiday. So the company Peak, you know, issued the last building in accordance with with the standard technology. Now we'll use other things for construction. So maybe I won't have some other to to share our experience with other cities, and now we'll construct in other cities. In 2-3 years, we'll make quite a big step forward in other cities, not only in Moscow. Evgenia, thank you very much. It was a very interesting presentation, and I really hope that we'll have a comfortable city. Now, Piotr Manin, please say about new technologies, speak about new technologies. How can we use them to make city more comfortable and also maybe cheaper? This presentation. Hello, dear colleague. So it's very pleasant to be here for me. It's an honor. The colleague mentioned in the first presentation that maybe I will speak about BIM technology. I will speak about this technology for several years already. BIM is a technology which can optimize processes and also work at all stages of life cycle of the building. But now the general picture is changing. Now we are speaking more about BIM not as only one project, one building, but we speak about even the whole city, the whole district, the whole neighborhood. And this information which builds up, it can really solve a lot of challenges, and challenges not only of one project, but of the whole city, of the whole agglomeration. Now we have this information, and we can use new technologies. On the slide, you can see the example of our office in Toronto. Here we used the technology of artificial intellect. We know that it is being implemented in machine building. We name it fabrics of the future or technologies of the future. Now we are at such stage that when this artificial intellect can still make a revolution, and also in the construction sector. Initially, we had some criteria, the traffic of people, the level of noise, lighting, some preferences of people. All these criteria should be considered. They are processed with some algorithm. Then we get about 10,000 versions of functional possibilities of this building or office, and then we can select the best things out of this. So in this short video, I would like to show you these things. First, we have initial data, initial information. Then we use the algorithm. We find the best options, process them, and then we get an end result, which we use then for design and for further processing of our projects. What should I say here? What results can we see of the whole process? First, we save a lot of time. We spend less time for the project. Then we achieve quality, which was not available before. Transparent, we get transparent, time-checked functional schemes. And also we can be sure that this is optimum. And today our subject is uniqueness. All these projects are unique, and the results usually are unique because each time we get brand new functional schemes of the project, and then geometry and architecture catch up with this, because we need to fill in this content. You can see this is a real site. It works, everything functions very well. But the main question is, how can we scale this up? How can we use this in Moscow, in Russia? Now, on the screen, you can see the models of separate sites of Moscow. These are not just pictures. These are not 3D models. These are models which have information, and they have this initial data which I spoke about, which we need for this technology to work. We are sure that in Russia we have a lot of companies which already started to implement this modeling, and the next step is to use algorithm of programming and artificial intellect in order to have our space, our homes better and more unique, and it should be also convenient for use. Thank you very much.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Peter. Emmanuel, as you represent one of the largest construction companies, what's your view on this conflict, if you can call it a conflict, between uniqueness and the serial model? Thank you very much. Well, I think nobody knows what we company is. We started to work in Russia in the Soviet times. We built the Iris hotel together with Professor Fedorov, and today we built a cultural center and a church in Paris, just next to the Tour Eiffel. And briefly about the company. We have this history from the Soviet times. Of course, we started working in France. Francis Bouygues created his company when there was a housing crisis in Paris, and you had to build a lot and quickly. And we had our Chiramushki, because Chiramushki in Russia is the first housing district built in that time. Just like in the movie Irony of Fate, the classical Russian movie, the characters were complaining about the lack of housing. You still see it in Russia today. And just as democratic housing and Soviet vehicles tried to solve it at that time, IKEA tries to solve it today. In France, we still have a certain issue with housing. In France, there is this district, Issy-les-Moulineaux, where together with the city government, we try to create a new eco-district, 100% new eco-district. It is a smart district, so you have all the modern technologies implemented there. And the challenge there is to combine efficiency with uniqueness for every building or every part of the district. Because initially the government wanted to have this oval layout for every part. And then we decided to have different architects for different buildings, which would bring uniqueness to the buildings. And thus the residents think they live in a unique house. This is an interesting example, and I think Moscow has this issue as well, because your master plan foresees to build 5 million new flats. That's a lot. But there is this opportunity of creating a unique building in every case, which would bring uniqueness to the buildings. And speaking about the revolution, the main revolution is the BIM revolution, because when we built these buildings in Paris 60 years ago, I know that people thought at that time that organization was the key for the construction. construction operations were the key. And we built plants to create these prefabricated panels on the eastern part of the city, and the same thing happened in the Soviet Union. And I think BIM today is the new revolution for the construction operations, just like 3D printing. BIM allows to plan seamlessly, efficiently. It allows to collaborate within the project, collaboration between architects and builders, and with the use of artificial intelligence. Thank you very much, Manuel. It's great when foreign guests speak such a perfect Russian. And now, Birok, coming from the academia, what's your view on comfort, serial model, uniqueness in the urban spaces?
My background is manufacturing. I don't come from construction background or architecture. Actually, when I started this kind of research, I had very little familiarity with the field of building construction. But I've been with this research for the last 22 years. That's when I first started thinking about the process that I named contour crafting. There was the topic here of mass production of cities. Whenever we think about mass production, we think about making hundreds of thousands, millions of very similar products. And Henry Ford started that in the United States in early 1900s. And with the aid of mass production, he managed to bring the cost of the cars down to the level that middle-class people could afford it. And this is exactly why mass production is used in construction, but the result is really not as acceptable as we accept the cars. We can accept millions of other cars look like a particular model that we drive, but we don't accept our houses to be exactly like millions of other houses. So this uniqueness, as it was mentioned earlier, is a kind of a requirement when it gets to building construction. As you may have heard, in the last few years, the subject of 3D printing has become very hot, because 3D printing is the kind of process that exactly gives you that ability. It allows you to automate fabrication, but at the same time, it allows you to do customization. Every unit that you make could be different than the other one. However, 3D printing, as I started knowing it, was very limited and slow for large building, for large structures, and really the condition of it was not suitable for construction. And that's why I started thinking about a process that, again, I call contour crafting. The basic method of 3D printing is layer-wise fabrication, building objects layer by layer. While in manufacturing, we have started doing that in the last 20 years, it occurred to me that in construction, we have been 3D printing for thousands of years, basically. This beautiful fortress is in the city of Bam in southern Iran. It was built 2,500 years ago by 3D printing, layer by layer, bricklaying, basically. So the only structures that are built in layer-wise manner are buildings. And that's when it connected to me that the best way probably of using 3D printing is not in manufacturing, but in construction. And the principle behind invention of contour crafting is having a method that allows you to build with thick layers and yet maintain smooth surfaces. It is an extrusion-based process. I cannot delve too much into the details of the process here, but we have built over the years several different machines and made several demonstrations. This machine that you see there is pretty light. It's only about 500 kilogram. Like 3 people can carry it to the site, and it can build a reasonable size building. It can build hollow structures like the walls that you see there with very strong concrete, high performance concrete. Would you please show the first video?
Там видео попросил включить, пожалуйста.
So here is a nozzle that extrudes concrete and builds hollow structures. This concrete has got fiber in it, and therefore it has got reinforcement. We have tried different forms of reinforcement, including stainless steel fiber reinforcement, as well as segmented rebars that are robotically assembled into the concrete structures as the structures are being built. So a wonderful advantage here is that you can build all kinds of curves. You're not restricted to rectilinear features. Would you go back to the PowerPoint?
Презентацию обратно, пожалуйста.
Okay, I quickly have to. Well, here it's another demonstration building that have been constructed. There is a video here, but we will see it at the end. Again, you know, you do not have really limitation in design. Architects can design any kind of complex curvature, and the system builds it without any additional cost. Curvature also brings strength. So with the same material, you can get more strength if you include curvature in your designs. There are other implementations of the concept, just like a climbing platform that as it builds a building, it climbs it, so you can build high rises with the process. Or multi-nozzle system for large community buildings, multi-unit apartments and so on. We have also been working with NASA on using the technology for building on Moon and Mars. I have a presentation at 3 o'clock about future of humanity in space, and I talk more about our project with NASA and how we use the local material, in situ material, to build with the kind of concrete that we have formulated without water. This technology received a NASA grant prize in a competition that had more than 1,000 participants. We have a center at the University of Southern California to look at different aspects of this technology with respect to different implementation modes and different areas of science and technology and humanities that it could impact. More recently, I have started a company called Contour Crafting Corporation. It is located in Los Angeles. We have raised significant investment from a European partner, and we are hoping to release our first machines in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. That is very interesting. And now I'd like to ask Perta once again, because the previous speakers spoke about, so to say, hardware, but when you use hardware, you need software. And it is very often the case that you need software to create something. And is it possible to create software, or do you have software that a user can use in order to create his dream building using his iPad? Well, I have two facets in my answer. If we speak about 3D printing, then we quite actively cooperate with our Russian companies. They're a little bit different from what the previous speaker presented. They are, of course, interested in getting integrated with the automatization companies so that this path from design to construction be smoother. Speaking about our company, we're actively entering the construction market, because if our technologies used to be considered as technologies for the design phase, now they can also be used during the construction phase. Because today, software is not about file sharing. It's about using updated information on smartphones, interacting with the design office online, quickly solving all the issues. Thank you very much. Evgeny, I have a question to you. Evgeny, I have a question to you. We spoke about the uniqueness earlier today, but I remember that when we started building unique, so to say, buildings in the Moscow region, one-owner buildings, this uniqueness was so peculiar that it seemed bizarre and, well, too much. Well, it is quite understandable that people want to live in a unique building, but do they really need this? Because people think they want to live in a unique building, but
about the individual construction. Here I would like to make a comment regarding the governmental regulations in this area. In Moscow, you know, the houses, the buildings cannot go through, you know, alignment. So some types of the houses. That's why maybe the owner of the buildings should make decisions and they can express themselves. The owners, you know. There is such a notion as a design of the city, of the houses, but a design code. But we have such design codes in Europe, and we have regulations. They even, you know, there are a lot of criteria for houses in cities of Europe. They have their own image because of these codes, their language, and I think this is right. We also think about these codes, design codes, and how we can implement these design codes in Russian cities, because the design codes will be spread for all buildings within the borders of the city. Thank you very much. And now, as a conclusion, I would like to ask you, Erlan, when we spoke today about uniqueness, we also mentioned the technologies. We said the technologies will allow us to make buildings, to make all this process larger. So a person can do this it's himself with the help of 3D printer, for example. Is the industry, you know, ready for such people who will construct themselves?
Very interesting that we've just had this 40 minutes of conversation mostly on new developments. Meanwhile, more than half of the market in construction is about renovation. And a lot of renovation, especially in Russia, is still about do-it-yourself, about people doing it in their dacha, in their flats and all this. And we see as construction product manufacturer today how much we have to tailor our products for the self-application of people. You would be amazed to see the bloggers community, how active they are in Russia, making very simple demonstrations on hours and hours of videos with hundreds of thousands of followers, explaining to people how can they become themselves excellent applicator of solutions. This, for us, is the future. Here we've been talking about mostly B2B environment, but we should not forget one of the fastest growing company in this country is Leroy Merlin, okay? So they're taking market share and all this, but in the end, a lot of attention amongst ourselves should also go to this huge market of renovation, and here we have a responsibility to educate the end users to help them understand what are the right construction technologies. I'm not sure they'll go to 3D right away, but there's a lot they can already do, and that will contribute to make more comfortable and more efficient cities for tomorrow. Thank you.
Спасибо вам большое. Thank you very much. Спасибо, уважаемые гости. Давайте поблагодарим.
Let's applaud our speakers, and I wish all you continuation of exciting discussions and fruitful participation in this forum. Thank you very much.